Welcome, everyone. On today's Do Now, I was hoping you could explain to me some of the stuff you know about the Second Amendment. It's also known as the right to bear arms. Um, if you don't know anything about it, that's okay. That's kind of our goal for today, is to understand the Second Amendment, but also, are you okay with limiting this right and freedom that's given to you by the Second Amendment? So here's the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia. If you don't know what a militia is, that's like unofficial army. Right back in the day, we didn't really have a very good army to protect us, so people in towns would get together to provide defense for themselves against lots of different potential threats. So they're saying people need to be able to protect themselves. Is necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And it's kind of like a lot of old language that we don't use today, essentially saying because people being safe and is required for the success of a democracy, the right of people to have weapons will not be taken away. Right? You're allowed to own weapons. Is essentially what the Second Amendment is saying. Now, this has been something for 250 years or so. America's had this right of freedom, but in the last 30, 40 years, people have been looking at this and questioning if this is really right for our modern society, right? The guns that they had back then were these rifles that would take a few minutes to load. People are using them to hunt. People are using them for defense. It was very often. Nowadays, you have weapons that fire, tons of bullets in a minute, extremely deadly. You have tons of ammo, tons of guns, and we're in crowded cities where maybe guns aren't always needed for defense. Um, so there's brought up lots of questions about like, should we be limiting gun rights? Because the negative effects of gun rights are very obvious. A lot of shootings in the United States, a lot of people dying from gun violence. Should we take away or limit this right or freedom? Now, people who are in favor of this are in favor of something called gun control. Gun control is an attempt to limit the Second Amendment, take away some of those rights and freedoms. Some people go very extreme and say no guns at all. Some people say certain types of guns or certain type of ammo should be limited, or there should be restrictions on who can buy it or how they buy it. Right? There's a lot of complexity here. It's not just a yes or no question. Um, your goal today is to try and figure out where on the line do you fit. Do you want to take a step towards more control and limiting gun rights, or a step towards more freedom, more ability to get weapons? And a lot of the central issue here is gun violence within our society. And so this comes back to our big question: when's it okay to limit freedom? Right? A lot of people said, um, we were okay with limiting rights and freedoms for COVID because we could save lives. We're okay with limiting our freedom of speech if it's killing people. Limit our right to protest if it ends in people's death. Well, here we got a right and freedom that is ending in people's death. Are you okay with taking away rights and freedoms? And there's a lot of people who believe in the right to own a weapon for self-defense. Right? There is a lot of crime and violence out there. You want to protect yourself and your family. People want the right to hunt. A lot of people enjoy shooting as an activity. And there's a lot of people say if you take away weapons from the people, the government will be more empowered to abuse their rights. The fact that Americans have guns means the American government cannot be as abusive. All right, it gives power to the people to potentially have to fight back against their government if that comes up. Now, remember, the guys who wrote this amendment started a war against their government. They actively did this. So they believed if your government was abusive, that you should fight back. And the only way to fight back is if you have weapons. Now, there are some restrictions on gun rights. Over the years, they've added things like age requirements, certain courses you might have to take. There's limits to how much ammo you can buy. There are certain aspects of guns that are illegal. There's a waiting period. So if you want to buy a gun, you can't get it that moment. You have to wait so many hours. So hopefully, if you're going to use it for violence, you can cool down. A lot of people want more restrictions. Maybe you need a license to get a gun. Maybe you need to have it locked up and kept safe at all times. You have to have it inspected. And some people want to limit the types of guns that are allowed, right? So there's a lot of potential restrictions. So we're going to read about some of the arguments for and against. As you read, you should be thinking we're going to use this to answer a level 4 question. So look for evidence, look for facts that are going to help prove your side. Think about arguments you might be making, arguments the other side is going to make, but also think of like how are you going to challenge, right? When you see an argument that goes against your point of view, how are you going to disagree with that? So we're going to take a few minutes to read. Um, when we're done reading, we're going to do a little discussion with partners, practicing explaining reasons, evidence, analysis, and counterclaims. After that, we're going to write a level 4 response. And I really want to focus on the analysis part. This should be a few sentences long. You're thinking about, well, how does my reason prove my answer? Why was my reason the most important thing to bring up? Of all the stuff we could have talked about with the Second Amendment, why did you say what you did? Why is that supposed to change someone's mind? Also, 1 second. Sorry about that. I was interrupted. The next thing I want you to focus on is when you challenge a counterclaim. So within our level 4, we need to present the counterclaim. You need to tell me, what does the other side say? What are their arguments? And why do you disagree with them? And this is kind of like analysis, but you're arguing the opposite. All right, you're going to challenge. So we got to come up with reasons why other arguments are wrong. Why is the opponent wrong? Is what they're saying false? Is it irrelevant? Is it not as significant as yours? You got to come up with something, some reason why they are wrong and you are right. So I have a writing guide. You can use it or not. There's sentence stems on it. You can use them or not. But we're going to practice our level 4 responses, and this will be the expectation when we do our next test.